The Pirates look as bad on this road trip as they looked good in the last homestand. It's hard to believe it's the same team, and it's even harder to be patient for everyone involved. That's next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan. The very first thing I learned when covering this team way back when is that the only thing most fans agree on is that telling them to be patient is about the last thing they want to hear. That said, there's no way to do this game without some level of patience, whether it's earned or not, especially in a market like this, because you are going to have to watch prospects come up, and prospects always, almost always, struggle when they get here. So every topic today is going to be some variation of patience, because they're all going to be looking forward. We'll start with last night's game, and we're going to head into preparing to turn the page on 2025 and this GM. The Pittsburgh Pirates suffered a tough 4-3 walk-off loss to the Kansas City Royals on last evening's game, extending their losing streak to 5 games and deepening their struggles on a 9-game road trip ahead of the All-Star break. The game was back and forth. Both starting pitchers, Mitch Keller and Seth Lugo, they delivered nearly identical performances, really. Each one allowed 1 run on 3 hits with 5 strikeouts over 6 innings, keeping the game tight through the middle frames. The Royals struck first with a solo home run by Jack Caglione in the second inning, and the first extra base hit in 14 games for the youngster. Pirates responded in the fourth when O'Neill Cruz launched a towering 458-foot homer to tie the game. Cruz's blast came on the same day he was announced as a participant in the home run derby. So, I mean, I have some mixed reactions on that. We'll talk about that a little bit, maybe a little closer to the All-Star game. In the 7th, Nick Gonzalez gave Pittsburgh a brief 2-1 lead with a solo shot of his own. But that lead was like really short-lived. In the bottom half of the inning, as has happened so many times this year to Mitch Keller, Kansas City's Nick Lofton answered with a 2-run homer that put the Royals back on top 3-2. Now, let's kind of take a break from the recap here, because I did think this was a pivot point. I talked yesterday in the show about Donnie Kelly being a little bit quick on the trigger with starting pitching, and he has been. I think he's pulled a lot of starting pitching out when they probably still had a little more gas in the tank. Well, here's a perfect example of Don Kelly doing exactly what I wanted him to do. I wanted him to let the pitcher stretch his legs a little bit, and Mitch Keller had been dominant. So I definitely wanted to see him come out there and pitch the 7th. Well, Don Kelly did too. And he put him in the game and let him go out and try to get that extra inning. And look what happened. Right? Now you can say like, oh, well, that could have happened to anybody. Sure it could have. But Mitch Keller's in the 7th inning, nearing the end of what he had left to give, and he ends up giving up a 2-run home run. Can I guarantee that wouldn't have happened with another pitcher? No, I cannot. But I can say the Pirates made an active choice to go with a short bullpen because Chase Shugart went on the IL, and they called up Jack Sawinski instead of another pitcher to replace him. So you lose a guy like Chase Shugart that Don Kelly loves to go to in those types of situations where you get a guy on base through no fault of your own. Mitch Keller's first base runner in the 7th was a catcher's interference call on Henry Davis, and it was a ghost of a call. I mean, I think technically it was right because it looked like the bat may have touched like the laces on the very end of Henry's glove. But man, that's a call that don't get made without replay. I'm just saying. I didn't see enough contact there to even bat an eye. Salvatore Perez, a catcher, of course, called it out right away. And the umpire agreed. He is awarded first base, and next comes the home run that gives the Royals the lead. I just think this is a decision that I don't want to question because it's something I just championed. That said, this is how razor's edge it is when you decide what you're going to do with a starting pitcher. You're probably going to get criticized one way or another. Let's say he had pulled Keller out and another pitcher came in and gave up the same thing in the seventh. Well, he gets criticized for pulling, Mitch Keller. Let's say that he pulls Mitch Keller and another pitcher does the job and they get to the next inning. Well, there's a percentage of you that would complain that other pitcher did the job that Mitch Keller should have and could have done because you want to make sure he has a chance to get that win, right? Well, Don Kelly has a little bit of that in him because even after he gave up that 2-run shot to give up the lead, he left Mitch Keller in there. He wanted him to try to get that one more out so he could at least qualify for something if the offense were able to provide in the next inning. And that didn't work out either, because Mitch gave up another hit and they ended up having to pull him out. And I just think that there's something to be learned there, at least as a fan. You can have a theory of what should be done and you can think what it looks like it should look like. But in game, these decisions have to be made, and they have a lot more information at their fingertips than we do about what these guys have left. There's conversations that take place in the dugout where they're asking a guy how they feel. And believe it or not, some of them are pretty honest about not having a lot left. Some of them are not honest and claim to have full strength when they're just about gassed. I think as a manager, it takes time to learn and figure all that out. And I think Don's done a great job here. This isn't a criticism of him. This is more just an observation about a decision that I think we have an advantage as Locked On Pirates here because we talked about this yesterday and we immediately got to see it come to fruition and not work out. So we don't get to sit here and pat ourselves on the back and claim that we're geniuses. Me, you, anybody that agreed with that thought yesterday. I just think that there has to be a little bit of understanding when they do things like that. We should probably realize that we're human and don't know everything. The Pirates showed resilience in the 8th inning. They loaded the bases. They tied the game on a Brian Reynolds ground out that he ran hard to prevent from being a double play. But, man, you got to start seeing more from Brian Reynolds. It's just not enough. This team can't go anywhere without Brian Reynolds or O'Neal Cruz being a lot more than they've been. They couldn't capitalize any further. The Royals made them pay in the 9th. After 2 quick singles off Dennis Santana, Lofton came through again with a walk-off RBI single off Isaac Mattson, and the Kansas City Royals walk it off 4-3. So Santana goes 2. This was a little bit of a weird situation too. They let him take the 8th, and that was cool. That's what he always does. And we've seen them try to see him stretch into a second inning a few times. Not so much when they've allowed him to go a full inning the inning before, then do the up and down. So there's a little bit of a different thing, and I think a direct reflection of being a little short in the bullpen, at least on arms that Don Kelly trusts. And I think it might have been pushing Dennis Santana a little bit. He didn't look the same in that in his second inning of work. He was giving up a lot harder contact than he typically does, and suddenly didn't have the bite on his slider that we've seen. At least not the command of where he was putting it. Again, that could just be a performance, or it could be, hey, maybe Dennis isn't the best guy to be trying to get 2 innings out of. Just a thought. I think we have plenty of options in that bullpen to get 2 innings out of. You've got a lot of guys who are capable of it and a lot of guys who have done it. So I think I would have liked to have seen them go with somebody aside from Dennis Santana in the ninth. It looked like they had Bednar getting up and they changed their mind. I think they were probably going to go with him in the 10th if they were able to force it. But we can second guess these decisions again, but I think it's fair to say that they are fairly equal sides of the coin as far as which side you would go with. Looking ahead today, you got Bailey Falter going against Chris Bubik. Bubik has been great, a 2.36 ERA. Bailey Falter not bad himself, 3.69, but the last thing the Pirates need is to face yet another really good pitcher, and that's what they're going to get today. And that's the way it goes when you're losing. Today, they either match their 6-game winning streak with a 6th straight loss, or they start rebounding. No matter what, next segment, we're going to start talking about turning the page to 2026 and what that really means. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? Nope. You called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. Did you juggle 2 phones just to keep your business and personal calls separate? OpenPhone solves that instantly. OpenPhone is offering Locked On Pirates listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonmlb. That's openphone.com/lockedonmlb. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Make sure you hit me with a subscribe and a like. I appreciate it. The comments have been really good. Let's keep those going. Turn the page to 2026. It's more than just a campaign promise. It's what we have to do. What this means for me, you, this team. In the third segment, we're going to talk about moving on from the GM. So can I at least leave this at your doorstep that it's a fair assumption that I think that's part of the process, moving on from the GM? Do I have to do that whole preamble right now? I don't think so. We'll do that in the third segment. Turning the page to 2026 for fans and people covering the team mean different things. I'm both, so I get to do both. As a fan, I officially stopped being excited about anything that happens from a player that isn't going to be here next year. Okay. So I look at things like I need to get answers to questions and I need to get people's feet wet and I need to start experiencing some of what I think this team could look like next year. So for me, I'm making some pretty big decisions right away. Okay. I'm using Henry Davis, the lion's share of the time at catcher. It's time to see what he is. It's time to give him a chance. You can't just play around with a 1-1 and expect him to, in limited at bats, somehow find a way to become a superstar. You can't. You don't just get to go, hey, that guy's been a 1-1. At some point, everything's going to click for him and we're all going to recognize it, right? That's just not how it works. Henry Davis may not ever be a great hitter in this league, but he has a lot of power. And the more at bats he gets and the more he plays, the more confident he looks. He's become an elite defender. And I mean elite defender. All the pitchers look better throwing to Henry Davis, including Might I add, Dennis Santana yesterday, who looked great in the 8th inning. And yes, it could be about the up and down, but it could also be that they went and changed his catcher on him for the 9th inning. And it didn't look nearly as clean. He wasn't getting nearly as many calls as he was getting in the 8th inning. And there's no attempt to control the running game with Joey Bart. I'm not saying Joey Bart needs cut or whatever. They could trade him. They could not trade him. I don't care if he's a backup next year. I don't hate him being part of the team. But the reason we were excited about Joey Bart was that he was hitting home runs. He has one. I'm sorry. There's no reason to be playing him. We've as limited as Henry Davis's time has been. He has 4. You know? He's hitting a little bit better recently, and I just want to see a lot more of it. Let's start seeing if he can really carry the weight of starting catcher load. He's a 1-1. You don't get to just go, oh, well, it hasn't worked out yet. You have to try. You have to try. You pick that guy 1-1. You've got to do everything in your power to make sure he has an opportunity to show you that he's a 1-1. And no, it's not some batch of 50 games in his rookie season. It's now. Now that he's got himself established as a major league talent, which at the catching position, he already is. I mean, I've told you before, he may not be a superstar, but I can guarantee you Henry Davis, if he stays healthy, will have a 10-year career in this league. There is a place for defensive catchers, and he is going to occupy it. I think there's a very, very, very strong case to be made that he is going to have a long career. Does he ever crack that offensive shell? I don't know. Maybe he just turns into a guy who, in general, hits like 220 and pops 15, 20, 25 home runs a year over the course of his career. But you're never going to know if you don't try. And that's what they got to do. I would say this applies to other guys too. Like, I don't really need to see Tommy Pham anymore. I know he's hotter than hell right now. You got to play him until you trade him or whatever. There probably will be a taker. There always seems to be for some reason for Tommy Pham. But trade him away, fine. You got to see what you're doing with some of these guys that you got to make 40-man decisions on. Like Jack Sawinski now, this is like his 5th year here, 4th year here. It's time to decide if he's going to be here or not. You got to move him on from the 40-man if not, because you need the room. He's up here right now. I don't know how long he's going to stay up here, but I'm much more interested in watching him play a bulk of at-bats, and I mean a bulk. If you sit there and you look at O'Neal Cruz and what he does side by side with Jack Sawinski, I think they're both capable of leading the league in strikeouts and hitting about 30 home runs. I'd like them both to be better than that, but they're not yet. I'd rather see Jack than Pham. And I would rather see it for the rest of this year. I mean, bar none. Sure, sit him against lefties, whatever. But that's a guy I need to see a lot more of. Get Nick York up here. Start moving these guys up here. I no longer care about what IKF does. Unless you're going to extend them, I don't care. I mean, like, get him traded. Get it moved on from. Those are the types of decisions I think we're going to have to see here very soon. Because nothing in 2025 really matters anymore. And in fact, one of the biggest reasons to get rid of the GM, it's not the draft. I have every confidence that's going to be handled fine. It's not even the trade deadline, because you could very easily just tell them to move the rentals. And honestly, who cares? Move the rentals. It's not going to make a difference. You're not going to get back major league players for the rentals. Have at it. Move them off and get some lower level players. Let your scouts that have been doing good work recently, the new scouts that you just hired a couple of years ago, Let them do the lion's share of figuring out who they'd like to target for these rentals and get it done. I don't care if this GM's here for it. But the reason I want to do the GM now is because I don't think he's going to allow this page to get turned to 2026. Because I think there's got to be some milestone he's supposed to reach this year that maybe saves his job. And I would like Bob Nutting to just straight up say there is no saving your job. We're done with it. Move on. And I think that just opens the floodgates of how much this team can really direct their attention into moving into 2026 with a purpose. Because there is no purpose in 2025. They screwed that pooch. That's already over. You allowed this team to go into a season knowing it was undermanned, and that was the time to criticize that GM. That was the time to get that GM fired. That was the time to recognize their incompetence. I feel in many ways Washington just did the exact same thing with Rizzo. They went into this season knowing what they were short on, knowing where they didn't have enough, knowing that they needed to do more, and they trusted the GM that they could get by with it, and they didn't. And they didn't improve in the places they thought they would improve. It's no different than here. It's been a long rebuild. It's been a very long rebuild. The next GM, I think, honestly, they're set up pretty sweet. They've actually got some top prospects coming up. They've got a team with a shell that I think is probably better than it's performed. And they've got an ability to go in and honestly look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, I've got the bones here of a top 5 pitching staff, period. I that's something to build on. I think they're going to have no problem hiring a competent GM that has a plan that makes sense even to Bob Nutting. But the time has come. Turn the page to 2026. When we come back, I want to talk specifically about the GM and why it's time and some of the things that have been reported recently that I just think need brought to light. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. New to FanDuel? New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Thanks for being here again, everybody. Yeah, move on from the GM. Fine. It's simple enough statement. Everybody wants to say it. It's not just incompetence, though. It's not just doing things poorly. I read a report on DK Pittsburgh Sports the other day from Dejan Kovacevic, actually, that there were some people that weren't so pleased about how the dollars Ben Cherington has allocated to him have been used. And I thought that was funny for a second. But I think we, as fans, tend to not think about the money in the right way. We kind of think about it as contract by contract. The only visible money that we really get to see is the payroll for the players that are on the field. And the best way I can kind of sum up this report is that instead of spending money on the field, Ben Cherington spent more money on analytics, which is kind of crazy because it's basically like examining something that, like, even deeper that you already understood. Like, you already knew that they didn't have what they needed here. So let's get some more analysts in here to tell us different ways to maximize the underwhelming amount of talent that we have here. I think things like that trickle down into the room and start to frustrate the room too, because they know what they have when they look around their team. You hear their interviews in spring training where they talk about this guy's going to be good, that guy's going to be good. We're excited to see this. So and so was super impressive the other day. They all will be supportive. Yeah, we're going to win the division. That's our goal. Of course they're going to say things like that. But there's also the realist side of you that leaves that interview and turns around and goes like, yeah, Tommy Pham in left field. Okay, Ben, I don't get that. And I bet there was a ton of people that felt that way in that room. In fact, another thing that Dayon had reported was that in spring training, some of the senior leadership on the team was trying to get messages through to Bob Nutting that Derek Shelton had checked out, and I think that's an indictment of the GM too, because they either felt like they couldn't go to him about it, or they already did go to him about it and he ignored them. So they felt like they had to get it up the flagpole even higher. There's something really, really strange about what Ben Cherington's done here. I'm not saying that he was given enough money to like go out and sign some giant free agent. Like, let's say like they had been the team to go out and take a swing at Tyler O'Neill. I mean, we'd have a whole new conversation about how stupid they are, right? Because their big swing would have been, well, like it's turned out for Baltimore. Not such a big swing, but you're now stuck with a pretty big paycheck. I could see that, but I think at least some of us would have felt like, oh, you tried. You really legitimately tried. This is a dude that crushed baseballs last year. We really needed it. It was a good try. Sorry it didn't work. I think there's a lot of that in this fan base. A lot of us will accept things like that. They tried, it didn't work out. I think we can all accept that. But don't try at all. Like, Tommy Pham's not trying, okay? That's not trying. That's just filling a hole with a warm body. It really is. It's believing your own bullshit. It's believing that your analytics are smarter than what everything else, every other piece of evidence is telling you. And we've talked about this aspect of Ben Cherington before. I think he needs fired primarily so this team can turn the page and move on. And until he's gone and people can start out loud calling him the scapegoat that he is, just like Derek Shelton, you felt like that release when they let go of Derek Shelton, because suddenly people were like able to be like, oh, yeah, that was a freaking problem. You're right. Oh, yeah, those lineups did suck. Oh, yeah, he always pulled those pitchers too quick. And all of a sudden, everyone was free to admit it and talk about it. I think we're going to go through that same kind of euphoria when they move on from Ben Cherington, because I think there's just going to be this flood door opening of people just exhaling and, oh, thank God, somebody that understands that you need players at the major league level. I think that's all going to come. And the sooner it happens, the better, if you ask me. Again, I'd get it out of the way like right now. It's not about the trade deadline. It's not about the draft to me. I think that stuff's all kind of handled underneath and presented to Cherington anyway. I don't think like what actually people think happens is that GMs are constantly calling each other, because that's what happens in the movies, right? But most of the time it's underlings talking and laying the foundation for things, and scouts suggesting players as targets, and other scouts suggesting players that we could probably move because they're primed to regress. And yes, they're using analytics to figure all that out too. And it's not like the day Ben Cherington gets fired, his entire analytics department gets fired, but I bet it gets pruned quite a bit. And I bet this team considers it extra money that they can spend on actual bodies who play baseball. That's the one misconception I think that we all have to take from this Ben Cherington era. The money that is allotted from Bob Nutting is not enough, but the money that is allotted from Bob Nutting to his GM, the GM is free to spend said money however he sees fit. So if that's training facilities in Bradenton, or that's hitting machines for up here with where you're facing virtual pitchers, if that's additional analytics guys to for some reason feel that you need 40 of them. I don't know how many they have, but you constantly think that you're doing the right thing by adding to infrastructure, but you're never investing in the actual on-field product. And that comes from just simply not sharing the same sense of urgency that everyone else does. And that's why his best answer whenever he's asked about urgency is, we know we have to get better. We know it's time to get better. And we know that we have to get better. Well, no crap. But that's the reason that's all he ever has to say, because he doesn't actually have that urgency. He just says what you think you need to hear. The truth is, they have got a lot of players coming within the next year or so. They have a lot of players that are ready to come up and get their last shot or the continuation of their shot, like Nick York, Billy Cooks, maybe even Malcolm Nunez steps in here. Jack Sawinski's a guy. It's time to start getting Bubba Chandler up here and get a look at him. It's time to go ahead and get, even other guys who are borderline, like Barco. I think his innings restrictions are probably going to keep him from pitching an awful lot this year, but get him up here. I don't care if it's a bullpen role this year. These are the things we need to start seeing. I just have no desire whatsoever to continue to watch guys that simply aren't going to be here. I just don't have any good takeaway from it. I don't care if Tommy Pham goes on a tear and hits 15 home runs in the next 2 weeks. I would still say the same thing. Yay, the team won, and I'm happy about that. I just don't give a crap about a guy who isn't going to be here. Everything for me starts flipping to 2026 now. If you're a guy that's going to be here in 2026 and you do something good, I'm double as excited as I would have been if you're a guy that I think should be gone or will be gone. It's a frustrating time to be a Pirates fan. It has been for a long time. It really has. When we move on from this GM, hopefully it comes with a new vision. But tomorrow, I'm going to start laying out the new vision. I think I want to start talking about how I would actually go about correcting some things that this GM, I think, has taken in the wrong direction almost from moment one that he stepped on campus. That's all I got for you today. Let's hope the Pirates can salvage one in Kansas City and then maybe go and right the ship against Minnesota a little bit. A potential trade partner too, so let's pay attention to those players. Let's go Bucks.